Because to deny the existence of objective value is merely to deny that value is something that is what it is outside of the existence of beings capable of pleasure, pain, happiness, and misery. It is not to say that it isn't real. Just as to say that color is not, in some sense, in the surface of the object, is not to say that it isn't real. Color, that something looks red, requires certain very, very specific combinations of reflectance in the object and patterns of processing in the cones in the retina. Similarly, that something is good or bad requires very special circumstances that have to do with the way human beings are constituted and the way in which the world impinges on them. So I'm just saying that things are indeed really bad, and that some of those things that are really bad must be imputed to God if you believe in God. Though the most obvious explanation for them is just that it's the natural laws of the earth, the tsunamis and the earthquakes and all these things in which people get sucked into the most awful suffering. These are not the acts of God because there is no God. But if you think there is a God, then you've just got to impute it to that God. You can't get out of it.
Thanks.
On Dr. De Sousa's view, there aren't really objective moral values. What there are things that either contribute or detract from human flourishing. And I think we could all agree with that. There are things that add to or detract from mosquito flourishing, for example. High humidity, warmth, and lots of blood will contribute to mosquito flourishing. What he cannot show is that we should morally promote human flourishing, or that this is a moral obligation. Now, I think you're right about your point about evil. I think there's really an argument for the existence of God from evil, and it would go like this. If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. 2, evil exists. Some things are objectively evil. 3, therefore objective moral values exist. 4, therefore God exists. So paradoxically, although on a superficial level evil calls into question God's existence, on a deeper level it actually proves God's existence, since apart from God there would not be good and evil as such.
I want to thank you both for your presentations. I just had a quick question for you, Dr. Craig.
Yes.
If God created everything, then who created God? And if God created himself, then how did he create the mechanisms to create himself?
Right. On the argument that I give and on the standard theistic understanding of God, God is a metaphysically necessary being. That is to say, he exists beyond time and space, and therefore he doesn't have a cause. He is the first uncaused cause. Remember, the first premise of my argument was whatever begins to exist has a cause. Something cannot come into being without a cause. But it's impossible for a timeless, spaceless being to come into existence. So God simply exists in an uncreated way. He is eternal, he's timeless and uncaused. Now, lest you think this is special pleading for God, I'd remind you that this is what the atheist has always said about the universe, that the universe is eternal and therefore uncaused. Matter and energy are eternal and never caused. But that's now become highly implausible in light of astrophysical cosmology. It points to a transcendent cause beyond the universe, which is eternal, timeless, and therefore uncreated.
May I? Yeah. Look, it may show that it was uncreated, but it certainly doesn't show that it's eternal, with no evidence of that at all. And I think my principal problem with this is not so much that I reject the argument, but that the argument appears to be completely irrelevant to any notion of God other than this unspeakable first cause, and bears absolutely no connection to any of the things that people want to think about God. Why the hell should we pray to this first cause? Why the hell should this first cause be concerned with us? Actually, it's pretty obvious that this first cause is not concerned with us. Look at the way things are going. Right? Look at the weather today.
If evolution was random, based on chance, then why is the gap between the most intelligent species being us so vast as compared to the second most intelligent species?
The gap between us and the second most intelligent species is not that vast. The more we come to learn about other primates, you had right here at York, which is actually at the other campus, you have one of the world's foremost specialists in orangutans. And if you talked to her and said that to her, she would just laugh at you. She has a whole series of examples of behavior in orangutans who are often not the ones cited as being the smartest of other primates, that show that orangutans are capable of planning, they're capable of understanding what other people want and tricking them, they're capable of all kinds of things. But what does make the difference is, and this is what my book is about, so you can buy and read it, what does make a difference is language, which has established in human beings and no other species a type of reasoning, which is explicit reasoning, using language, using mathematics, which, although it is slow, clumsy, often mistaken, tremendously difficult to handle. And that's why we need computers who are good at handling it, because it's basically a matter of language and logic and mathematics. We need it in order to do things that only human beings do. We need it in order to get to the moon, to build computers and cars and planes. No other primate will have done that. But that's not because we're so much smarter. It's because our smarts has become as well multiplied by this amazing new power, which is the power of speech, which is evolved in human beings and not yet in others.
Without wanting to make any sort of pronouncement on neo-Darwinian evolutionary theory, it seems to me Dr. De Sousa takes back with the right hand what he gives with the left. The fact that we are language users is an enormous difference between us and primates. And it's not just oral speech. I mean, it could be sign language or some other sort of graphic speech. The ability to manipulate linguistic symbols to refer to things in the world, to have intelligible patterns, is an enormous difference between us and primates. And that's why our primate cousins scratch around in the dirt and pick insects off each other's backs while we fly to the moon, ride in submarines, write symphonies and sonnets, and have universities. I mean, it's ludicrous to suggest there isn't this enormous gap between us and the great apes.
I'm questioning the first premise of the argument of the origin of the universe.
Which one?
The one that says, for anything to come into existence, we need a cause.
Yes.
Well, we understand the law of cause and effect based on inductive argument, or based on experience of seeing things changing into one another. I don't think we understand the cause and effect as an a priori knowledge, or as a deductive knowledge of something else that we already knew. Well, my question is, how do we apply that knowledge to things coming into existence, because we have no prior experience of that?
I'm not saying that we need to have a priori knowledge of this. I've never asserted that we have a priori knowledge of that premise. I'm perfectly happy to say that we know that a posteriori, that based on our experience of the world, we come to see that things do not come into being from nothing, that out of nothing, nothing comes.